Okay, we're going to get going here. So excited to have you join me tonight. I don't know how many of you participated last month in the local scapes class, which was it was a design-based class discussing ways to set up a design on the landscape that are not only economical but water-wise. But tonight we're going to speak more specifically to the designing process. This is usually an in-person class where we have graph paper and we work through some scenarios together, and I do a lot of stuff on a whiteboard. So hopefully I've added stuff to the presentation that will be important and helpful to you. But I'll just start by introducing myself. I see some familiar names up there, but for those who don't know me, I'm Jenny Kohler, and I am the Community Master Gardener. I've been in this role for almost 4 years. And in our community, we actually have 3 entities. We have the builder who's building the homes, Daybreak Communities. Then we have the HOA, who our homeowners association fees go to, and they are the management side of the community as managing the amenities, as well as the covenants and restrictions. And then there is the LiveDAYBREAK team, and that is the team that I work with. And we like to consider ourselves kind of the culture arm of the community, and putting on events and doing things that help to enhance the community experience. What is important to note tonight is that I'm not here representing the HOA. I don't speak for the HOA. It's particularly important in this class because we're talking about design and submitting plans to the HOA, that everyone understands that. So I can't say something tonight that somehow overrides something that maybe the design review committee could say by chance. But just so you know, I have my educational background is in landscape design with an emphasis in water-wise design. I don't do much design work. I really focus on teaching and consulting at this point. But I'm passionate about water-wise design. I'm passionate about beautiful landscapes. And I'm passionate about the Daybreak community. So not only do I work here, but I've been a resident here in Eastlake for almost 14 years. So I've really seen the community grow. I've also had firsthand experience with the design process. So as I speak to you tonight, that's where I'm coming from as a friend and a neighbor, as well as someone with horticulture background. So we'll get going. So when I talk to people about design, I know there's so many of you've got these ideas. We live in this computer generated world where we can access Instagram and Pinterest, and we're seeing things that we want. And this is really probably what we all want to have as far as a landscape design, but maybe we come from different backgrounds. We don't necessarily have horticulture experience, design experience. I talked to a lot of transplants. The Daybreak community attracts a lot of people from all over the country who are growing things in a totally different environment. We are really unique in climate with harsh, cold, snowy winters. Hopefully we get a little bit more snow, and then these dry summers. And that is very impactful on our landscape. So we have these ideas in our head. This is what we want our design to look like. And then this is what we tend to be able to do. And this is the part that I think most residents get either overwhelmed or frustrated with the design process because they're unable to maybe express and to share their ideas completely when they submit it to the HOA. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Just some things to think about as you're preparing your design and some ways to go about the preparation process. So the number one step starting in your design is taking your measurements. And it is important to be as accurate as possible, but it doesn't have to be precision. There's no one going to come out and double check your numbers. But what's really important from a design perspective is that when you're choosing 10 shrubs to go in this planter bed, that you truly understand that scale. For most of us, we tend to overplant, but we also, as we're competing and we have maybe smaller yards, that's important as far as for me to, wasting resources. We don't want to have trees that we end up taking out or shrubs that have to be taken out because we've overcrowded a space or because we didn't really understand the size of the shrub at when it's at its full size, when it's grown up, and we don't maybe understand the space in our yard. So you can get a plat map. If you're a new homeowner who's just closing your loan, that should be fairly easy for you to obtain from the builder. You can go to Google Maps, and I'll show you in just a second the glass house and what I did last year as far as setting up a design. And then I know that first image was like, that's what I want. I want to have that vision. But really, at the end of the day, what you need is a plan. Because a plan will help you to budget, a plan will help you to prep, and a plan will help you to envision what you want. And you won't make as many mistakes when you have that plan. So a drawn plan is just as acceptable to submit at this point than a professionally drawn plan. You don't need a professional. Most of you are probably working just either on a renovation or you're working on maybe a blank slate, like a new home in a backyard. So graph paper is a super easy way to do it. I've even seen it where, because they want the scale to be right, they've taped together 4 pieces of graph paper to make it that size. The hardest part about doing something like that is you want to make copies. I put that down there because I've made that mistake where I started drawing and I didn't have a copy made, and then I have to go back and have to redraw the line. But when you're doing that, you don't have to actually put your house, your house doesn't need to sit on the design. It just needs to be the landscape space. So don't take the time to, because that would be such a small scale if you try to take your front yard, your backyard, especially if you're doing a renovation, and then stick the house on it. I would do those on 2 separate papers and have your backyard on one and your front yard on the other. And you can always take those papers, those hand drawings, or maybe you can, there's hundreds of online type of software that you can easily throw in lines to create that generic map. Take it over to the office store, get it blown up. Take it over to the UPS store, get it blown up to a scale that you feel more comfortable looking at it. And it will help you in your mind start to imagine what the landscape is going to look like as you're throwing in your details. So this is just off of Google Maps. It's really easy to do. This is the glass house. And last year, you can kind of see the plantings over here to the right. We're working on renovating these 6 beds. We're running into some challenges. I got to honestly think that I had plants stolen from it. And of course, we have budgets. The LiveDAYBREAK team is a nonprofit. And so I just don't have an excessive budget to throw in all the plants I want. But I have this space.
Jamie, we are not seeing it.
You're not seeing this image?
Right. The first one, yeah, we are looking at it. The first page. It's still a step-by-step process daybreak design.
Okay. Thank you for telling me that. Let me see what I'm doing wrong.
It's on side now.
Can you see that? in the scaled down version right now?
On the left side.
We're still on the step-by-step, like there. Your title
Okay.
page. There we go.
You can see that change?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to put it in presenter view so you can see more of it, and let me know if you can see it from this point. Can you see that?
Yep. And
I'm changing slides. Can you see that? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I was showing you. Thanks for letting me know, Mayumi. The plan we'd want to have, the plan that we probably are capable of drawing up. And then these are just the steps I just took you through. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. You see this, the glass house?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. There you go. So in Google Maps, there's a really easy, to the right of your screen down here with these things, you change it into satellite view. And last year I redesigned these 4 beds. And this is how I took my measurements. It has a little click and drag option that allows you to take those measurements of that bed. So I didn't have to go out and walk the space. So that is another trick for you, especially if you're in an existing home or don't have access to the plat maps or don't feel like walking the space. For most of us, we don't have huge yards, so it wouldn't be the worst thing to go out and take the measurements, but that's just another little trick for you to help you not be caught up in some of the details. Okay, so this is a concept we talked about last month, and I've linked the YouTube here. It's available out on the LiveDAYBREAK page, as well as I believe it's linked on the garden series page on the LiveDAYBREAK website. If it's not, I'll make sure it is tomorrow. But these are just the 5 things I want you to think about as you're planning your yards. The central open shape, your gathering areas, your activity zone, your paths, and then plants. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time breaking down those steps, because that's what that class that you can watch last month will really take you through. But I want you to think about this. This is really probably one of the most important concepts in landscape design. Any type of renovation. You're going out with fresh eyes. Either you've got a blank slate in a backyard or you're making renovations. I want you to go out and I want you to look, what is your central open shape and how are you using it? For probably 95% of us, that central open shape is going to be lawn. When I'm looking at renovations, I am looking at where is that lawn not making sense? Where is it too small? Or where am I having plants that are struggling and it would make more sense to soften an edge or to bring a planting bed out in order to make my irrigation efficient? So this is the key step here that I want you to take away from this area. We need to plan for irrigation. We need to not design and then decide, okay, now I need to put the irrigation in. We need to have irrigation in mind. We have to have irrigation in Utah. That's just the way it is on our lawns. So that central open shape shouldn't be full of crazy lines. It can be curved. I prefer curved bed lines than I do straight lines or rectangular shapes, just because that's my personality. That's how I design. That's like how my flower beds look. But straight lines are great too. But what we're looking for is that cross coverage with our irrigation system and not overlapping into our planter beds. Because when we waste water in our planting beds, we can have all sorts of problems with our plants, as well as then lack of coverage in our lawn. And so we want you to be successful. So as far as the guidelines here in the community, they say a minimum of 5 feet wide. I think it has to be at least 8 feet wide to be able to water it efficiently. And it's to be 3 to 5 feet from the foundation of your house. So you need a planter bed that big. From a design perspective, 5 feet is ideal. That way you can layer in plants and then you can have depth and dimension. But maybe your yard, you're not feeling like if I gave up 5 feet all around the foundation of my house, I'm losing too much lawn space. So you have that. And then there needs to be a 2-foot planting bed around the fence on both sides. And if you aren't putting up a fence and you are an alleyway house, you're still required to have at least a 2-foot planter bed where the fence would have been in order to have that as far as the approach to the alley. Artificial turf is not permitted. And I know there's been some discussion on that. Why? In my experience and talking to landscape professionals, artificial turf is actually still work. It's still here in Utah, has to be watered. It has to be raked. It attracts all sorts of metals and magnets. I was talking to one guy and they have had to create this long magnet thing. It doesn't attract magnets. They use a magnet to pick up all the metal that's in it. And because it's attached down that way, it seems to pop up screws and different things. And so it's not ideal. And I think there's ways we can use lawn efficiently and water it effectively to still create a water-wise landscape. And I talked more about that in my class last month. So this is, sorry guys, this is the daybreak look. This house was actually designed by Cynthia B, who is out at the Conservation Garden Park, and I'll talk about that in a minute. It was used as 1 year in the Parade of Homes. It was called the Blogger House, and the inside was designed, this is probably Instagram, and they were still blogging, but this is truly like, this is such a great design idea of designing the daybreak way, following the HOA guidelines, as well as being a water-wise efficient landscape. And so if you look at that, maybe you don't see that as water efficient because there's colors and there's texture, and we get caught up in our mind that water-wise means dry, straggly plants, lots of rocks. But this is truly a water efficient landscape with great plant selection. And you can see they use edgy materials. Oh my gosh, sorry guys, I'm struggling here. You can see that they're using edgy materials. You can see that they have some pea gravel pathways. They have some upright plants, some great trees, lots of color and dimension in that yard. And I love this. This house has a little bit of slope. So they've made it so that the central open shape is up here on more of the flat area. So that makes it totally more usable, as well as then you're not fighting runoff with water and watering inefficiently. So using lawn as your central open shape, and you're designing with the sprinklers in mind. So letting that central open shape determine your planting beds. Sorry, that graphic is jumping there. So this is what I want you to think of in putting down your design. Making that central open shape first priority. Once you have that set in place, then we can add the next steps. So this is another example of central open shape. I love this one because I love the curve. This over here to the right, this little probably narrow more edge of grass, I probably would have cut out and just brought my planting bed right around to create some curve. We've got dimension, some height differential and things right there, but I probably wouldn't have done that side. The second step is you need to think about your gathering areas. We have the porches in the front yard, and most of us probably, our yards wouldn't accommodate a front yard gathering space, but really I think that's a lot of what we're using in our backyards. We have these amazing parks, we have these amazing community amenities. So for me personally, my backyard, the space that is used the most is my back patio that I have my grill on, that I have comfy seating, I have a fire pit, as well as a hot tub. That's how my family at this point in our life are using that space. And we use that space all the time. When my kids were little, they begged and begged for a trampoline, thinking that was a great idea, even though I had this slope in the backyard. It's just a subtle slope, but enough of a slope that a trampoline's not going to sit straight. And my husband was adamant, let's not do it. It's going to take up so much backyard. I finally caved and I ordered it. And because my husband wasn't super excited about the tramp, me and my son, and he was probably 10, we're like, we're going to get this tramp up. We're going to have it all set up, and then Dad doesn't have to worry about it. Well, since I ordered it, I misjudged the size, and I am not joking. That tramp hit basically the edge of every planting bed. And we had it up for 2 or 3 years. The kids loved it. It was a pain in the butt to drag it on and off different areas of the turf in order to mow. But it wasn't long lived because my yard just really couldn't accommodate that. So I want you to think of how you're going to use this space. Are you going to dine out there? Would it make more sense to create a patio with some type of pergola on it in order to have some shade because you're going to dine out there? You're going to have a fire pit. Maybe you want to do a fire pit, and maybe you don't want that right off the back door because maybe that's when the teenagers are hanging out and you want to think about doing something a little farther away. Like in this home, there's this gazebo over here to the left. And then that would be like, okay, we're going to do a fire pit, but it's going to be a little removed so the kids aren't right by the back door. So thinking about that is your next step. So you start with your central open shape. Then you add your gathering areas. This is a home up in Creekside. This was, again, Parade Homes home. And in this home, they have a side yard. You can tell that way by the picket fence. So it was going to be exposed to the street, but they decided to build up this great patio. And you can see the 2 different materials used. They used Trex decking up here and then cement down here and created 2 different type of gathering areas. So thinking outside the box, how to use those side yards, how to make them more usable. If your side yard is basically just a big mow strip, maybe it would make sense to add something off of it, some way to gather your family together. I had this discussion a lot, whether or not lawns make sense, not planting beds make sense. And I think there's a misnomer out there that lawn is easier to take care of than planting beds. But I just want you to think lawns require weekly maintenance and regular watering, regular nutrition, regular cutting, regular care. Whereas planting beds can be planted in a way that maybe you're out there once a month pulling some weeds. If you're watering efficiently and you are using the right mulching materials, I weed very little and I have a lot of planting beds in my own yard. So think about that as well, whether or not maybe it's time to pull something out. So then you have your activity zones. And you can see where the playground equipment is sitting on the lawn, similar to my tramp. That's not ideal. It's not ideal for maintenance, not ideal for irrigation purposes, trying to have your irrigation crossing over it. It wears down the materials that you're using as far as, maybe a wooden playground equipment, the pads on your tramp. So think about that. So maybe this is the year you cut out a space and you put a designated area where the tramp is. Maybe it's a corner that you've struggled having irrigation issues and it's not being watered efficiently. And so you'd maybe move to doing something to the right where you have some sort of hardscaping type of material underneath that, and then you're not irrigating that. And if you don't irrigate it, you'll have less of a chance of having weeds. And then what's great is, right now, maybe that's what your family needs is the playground equipment. But then because you're not having to adjust irrigation, maybe in 5 or 6 years, you pull that out and you put some fun chairs and a fire pit, and it's where your teenagers get to hang out. So thinking about those activity zones. Activity zones can include raised garden beds, your trampoline, your playground equipment. Those are all important details to add to your design plan. I was told once to create a dream list when submitting my design plan. Just having the things I know I want, whether or not happens within the year time frame, if it's on there, then that's going to be important to understand that. Now I know that they are moved to coming out and auditing yards. I don't know how regular they do that. I know that there is, they will follow up once you've submitted plans that you've done things. But there's no harm in maybe creating a dream list. And I'll speak to this in a minute, but this design process we're talking about here is just for the landscape. That would include lawn, plants, planting materials, and hardscapes on the ground. Anything that is going up, including fences, pergolas, trellises, any structures, sheds, that would be a separate application. There's a separate application, and I have the links at the end to submit those, because those do require another level of detail to be submitted. So if you know you want a pergola or some sort of covering over your patio, you could indicate on your design plans, future pergola here. But because you indicate it there and it gets approved, that doesn't mean your pergola has been approved. Pergola, again, those structures require engineered plans and a lot more detail to get them submitted. But don't be afraid to ask some questions to the HOA. I reviewed their site today, and they are having, whenever someone submits their landscape design application, they want to meet with you. They want to just sit down and discuss it. They're going to look it over, and they want to make sure that your details are there and that they can answer any questions for you. A big question I get asked is, Jenny, I had a shrub die. Do I need to submit a plan for that? It is my understanding that if you're replacing something that was dead or replacing something that's better suited, as long as the plant is on the approved list, which I'll talk about in a sec, that's acceptable to do. You can put your annuals in, you can put your bulbs in. You don't need to submit those kind of things. But if you are going through the process of submitting a design plan now, indicate, I will be planting spring bulbs. I will be putting annuals. This is where my pots are going to go. Those are the kind of things that when the design team reviews your plans, they're like, okay, they're paying attention to the details. They know that these are questions and concerns we may have. And they know that you're speaking to that. And that is super, super helpful in getting your design plans approved. And then there's your pathways. Pathways are connected to your areas. For those of us who have alleyway homes, pathways are really important because we're usually moving our lawn equipment around to our front of our house to mow, or to the side yard. Some have narrow side yards. I love when residents think outside the box. And I have great ideas on the Localscapes presentation last month. I'll show you on that presentation. You can just click through it, but there is some really great examples of some really successful use of planting beds as side yards, instead of just having grass at the side yard, or really no kid is going to play on that. It's too narrow, or maybe you're going to fight shade or too much sun in those areas. And you want to think maybe more of, a pathway and a connection. And you are open to materials. You're not limited. We don't have an approved stone or a rock or surface that we can use. But when you're submitting your plans, that is a level of detail that they are going to require. They want you to have thought that out and maybe made some preliminary research on that. So you can look on, the Lowe's site or the Home Depot site and say, this is the stone I want to use. Anything that is red or orange tone, even if it matches your particular home, doesn't necessarily match the way and the continuity that we try to create in our designs here, and with our yards feeding in together. Avoid any of those colors. The community hasn't been designed, and the homes aren't designed for like a Southwest feel, if that makes sense. That's an easy way to kind of describe it. No lava rock, no white rock. And you can use gravel in some areas as far as a mulch, but that does have to be approved as well. I do not like gravel in my planting beds. I think gravel makes sense in an area like a parking lot where you're never going to add anything to it. But if you'll notice, in a lot of parking lots, a lot of commercial areas where they use gravel as a mulching item, you see a lot of dead shrubs and plants. And that's primarily because the irrigation's buried underneath it and issues aren't caught soon enough. And then they lose the plant. And then it seems like 9 times out of 10, nothing ever gets replaced when that happens. So some more things to think about. And then at the end, that is where your plantings come in. This is like the frosting the cake, but this is the part that we get super excited about. This is the part where we we really want to, really get into it. And this is one of those, again, those daybreak things that I love to be able to dispel for people. There is a huge list of plants that is provable within the community. When I built my home 14 years ago and friends knew that I loved to garden, they're like, are you just so sad? I can't believe you'd move there where you can't even put a flower into your yard without approval. That is not the case. This dense planting right here, this is a shot from the Conservation Garden Park, is lovely to me. You can see depth, dimension, color, movement in that. That is all water efficient plants. It's all drip irrigated, and everything in that picture is completely approvable. And there are so many options for you out there. So those who are joining me tonight, I'm just going to let you know that I have been on a lot of forums the last couple of weeks, listening to local garden centers as well as some landscape experts. We are going to see a shortage of plants this year. It's just, unfortunately, most garden centers had the best year ever last year, which is kind of ironic with every other struggle that the pandemic has brought. But I think because people are home, they are focusing on those home environments, those living spaces, and you are not going to have as much selection or opportunity as far as plants goes. So if there's a tree you have in mind or a shrub you have in mind, that would be a priority at the first of the season. The perennials are easier, but if you think about it, trees take years to get to the right size that they're willing to ship them out to a garden center. So if you see something you like, I would encourage you to jump on it and again, make your plans early. It's 30 days once your packet is ready that the design review committee has to review it and get back to you. So that's why I teach this class so early in the season. So not only you can make your plans, but if you need to get professional support, you can get on people's lists. I know a lot of friends have struggled trying to find contractors for inside projects. So that is something to think about. So these are just some other homes here in the community that I find have successful design concepts. I love this one in the bottom left-hand corner. And if this is anyone's home, good job. I love the dimension and the color that you can see. It doesn't look as great when it's blown up like this, but there's so many different ways to do it. And there's no wrong or right way. And when I first started in my schooling, I had one professor who was very particular on how she felt design needed to happen. Like the architecture is this way, needs to be this bed style, these kind of plants. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I feel like it's just like our clothes and like what we do inside our home. I think it has to speak to you. And I think you have to enjoy it. Some of the struggles I see here when I've gone and done some consultations is either they're trying to choose plants that aren't great for Utah, or they have put plants that are not the right size for their space. And even the builder could do that. I'm not, I wouldn't criticize any of the builders, but I mean, my neighbor behind me has that 2-foot space on their alleyway between the alley and their fence. And there's like 5 prunus sand cherry bushes. Those bushes are a 12 by 12 shrub in a 2-foot space, and 5 of them. So every year he's got to just trim those back and bring them down. But again, that was on the builder side, and so that kind of falls into a different kind of category. And then when we go to the HOA side, where us as residents have to apply their principles. So think about that. If you are spending too much time taking care of a particular shrub or tree, Marie Kondo it and let it go. Think of something else. It's a common problem we see, especially in our front yards, where maybe they're all put in at the same time and not as much thought has gone into that. So here's a list of resources. At the top one is one of my favorites. It is a conservation garden park, and I'm linking you to their plant list primarily. This is a free botanical garden. It's open year round. They have a great new exhibit that just launched. It's been about a year and a half ago, about that localscapes concept that I've taught about that design concept, where it's actually like a mock-up house where the yard is laid out in these planting ways, in these 5 steps we've discussed here tonight. It's such a fun place. You can take the kids, you can take the stroller, you can pack a lunch, you can go out for an activity as spring comes in. You can go out, you can see trees as they're starting to leaf out, their spring flowers. Come back in the summer, see it in full bloom. Such a great resource. Anything on that Conservation Garden Park plant list is approvable in the community. So that's my go-to place. As far as if you're having a question, you're trying to get some ideas, and the way they set up their database is really user-friendly. You want some spot that has some fall color, you can plug that in and it will give you that list. I love High Country Gardens. They are an online retailer based in New Mexico, but because of their location, they speak to this high desert state that we live in. Progressive Plants, another great resource just out off of Bacchus. They are a nursery and they are now open. They used to just be a wholesale, but they are open to the consumers. But what they aren't is it's not as easy as just going out there and wandering through them. They've got a huge piece of property because they're a grower and a distributor. But their online plant index is great. Okay, I'm giving you guys all the secrets tonight since you logged in and you're here in this class or you're listening to it. But I hope everyone takes advantage of number 4, Water Smart Sojo. We are so blessed to live in this city. We have such a great, I feel like we have great leadership in the city and some great ideas about how to run the city. And Daybreak's a huge part of South Jordan, but Water Smart Sojo is a plant rebate. Well, it's got more than just a plant rebate. It has water-wise rebates. On there is, they had it last year. I know the plan is that they're going to have enough money to do it again this year. For every South Jordan resident, you can qualify for a $300 plant rebate through the city for a water-wise plant. If it falls on the Conservation Garden Park site, has to be planted within your planting beds, and has to be drip irrigated, you can qualify for that $300 plant rebate. That is a ton of plants. That's a ton of perennials. You could get a really good sized tree and shrubs. So please take advantage of that. They also offer other rebates as far as switching out like a shower head or toilet, those kind of things. Also, you can link there and they come out and do a water audit. So if you're in an existing home, especially anyone in some of the older areas, Founders, East Lake, where I live, if you're not sure about your water or your grass is struggling or your plants are struggling, do a water audit. They will come out, they will run your irrigation for you. They will show you how to set up your sprinkler box so you understand that. That is kind of a hard concept if you're new to all of this to understand. I do teach a lawn maintenance class. I'm going to teach it the first, I believe, in May. I'll double check that. And I will discuss lawn, all the things you need to know for lawns. If you've got kids that want to go out and start doing, run a lawn care thing this summer, send it to my class, because I feel like that is, I speak about that maintenance and irrigation and all of that. So you'll have an opportunity for that. The YouTube link is a link that the HOA has set up on their site where they talk about the steps to submitting a design. And then the next link is the link to the website as far as the nitty-gritty details of submitting a landscape design. But don't be overwhelmed. And the HOA is not scary. They are great. They're great to work with. They're helping maintain these community standards and helping us to keep the community, going strong. Come to the East Lake community. If you are new to the area, come up to East Lake. We're the second village that was established. And like I said, I've been here almost 14 years. I feel like to see it in a more mature fashion helps you get some ideas of what you're doing in your yard and maybe what you want to do. So here's some of my tips. And again, I've talked about them throughout the presentation. Details. A more detailed design plan, the better it will be. You'll have more success in getting it submitted. I talked about needing the separate application for those physical structures. There's red and orange tones. Really, it's not, they're not expecting you to be a professional. They just want details. You can throw it into a PowerPoint. You could throw it into a Google Sheets. Whatever you're comfortable with, you can hand draw the whole thing. Pictures are super, super helpful. So you want to put a tree, grab an image, put that on your presentation. You want the planting beds to look a certain way, and you found a Pinterest picture that you like, include that. Say, this is what I'm going for. They're knowledgeable people who understand that and want to see you succeed. Because really, everyone finding success in their landscape benefits us all. So it helps them, they are trying to make sure you find success. So I just pulled these today. Progressive Plants, again, it's that resource I told you, they're that nursery out off Bacchus Highway. It's out west from us here. They're a great follow, as well as the Conservation Garden Park on Facebook or social media if you have access. They constantly are kind of showing new selections, new plants that are doing well. Everything that they bring in at Progressive Plants, you can trust will grow here. They grow very little annuals, and it's not like going to Costco where you get this beautiful bougainvillea and you're so excited about in the spring, only to realize it's not going to survive our winter and not very long into our fall. So these were just some images today that I thought were just really lovely. And these that they're posting should be plant selections that are readily available on the market. So these are resources for you to use. You don't have to come up and be, creating this out of nowhere. And you can get overwhelmed as far as, oh gosh, I want this purple color. What's going to work great? And I say this is the cat's meow catmint. That's the specific type of that catmint. But you could just list catmint, and that would be acceptable as far as the size that is, the color that is on your landscape plans. Or you could say cat's meow catmint on your landscape plans. And if it's not available and you choose another catmint, they're not going to come out and say, I need to see all your plant tags. You didn't put in the catmint. That's not the level of detail they're going for. You could say you're going to plant 5 catmint, but you only can find 3. Again, they're not going to come out and count your plants in your yard. They're not concerned about that. They're looking for that overall aesthetic. They want to know that your irrigation has been put in right, that you put the grass in, that you're maintaining it. That's really what they're concerned about. So I've got a couple of slides here. This one I wanted to show you. This is what I did last year for, if you live in Garden Park, or if you haven't seen it, you should go this spring and summer to go visit it. The Garden Park placed a beautiful sculpture in the main area of their gardens. It's right near their community garden spots. They, through funds, through the Arts Council and the LiveDAYBREAK committee, they raised funds for the sculpture garden. And then I designed the plantings around it. So this looks pretty professional, but I wanted to show you this image because how easy it is. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plants on it. How I use color and how I used a different graphic, which is easy to do when you have a design system, right? But you can see like the top plant, this little purple, this is a phlox. So it spreads, it's only 4 inches high, but it spreads to 24 inches. So I just used an oval. That's a totally acceptable graphic to say, I'm putting a ground cover here. And you could say, I'm putting ground cover, and you could use that oval in various parts of your yard. And then under ground cover, you could say, this includes candy tuft. This includes phlox. This includes vinca. This includes this plant. So that when it comes to what you actually install, it's going to be one version of those. And that's an acceptable way of doing things. But just tweaking your graphic or doing just even, they can be all circles, and you can get an easy circle template and just color coding it. Go get you a pack of 24 colored pencils and just color code it. Really, really easy to do as far as submitting. But again, I don't have a scale on this design. I didn't have to worry about it. I measured it. I knew who I was submitting it to. So I didn't go through that level of care that you would need to do. So you would want to make sure you know the scale. So if you're using graph paper, maybe for 1 square, that's a half a foot, whatever seems to make sense to you and however big your lawn is. But I just wanted to throw that up there just so you have some ideas in mind. Here's another great plant combination. Progressive does have landscape designers available that you can hire. And they do offer that service out there. There's lots of landscape professionals. I just don't want you to feel like it has to be a professional or you won't be able to be successful. Because this is definitely, gardening as a whole should be something we can all accomplish. I teach a class in other places, just a kind of like a gardening 101, and the name of the class is Mary, Mary, Quite Contrary, How Does Your Garden Grow? And I always talk that no one is a bad gardener. Like you just got to have the tools, right? And it's a trial and error. And anyone, in fact, I just read this article in Garden Gate magazine. It's the new director up at Red Butte, and he talks about his failures. And, you know, he's been in Australia and in Texas doing designs. And so coming to Utah is really different for him. Coming and thinking about water conservation is really different. So we're all going to have our successes and failures. And I'm going to put a plug in for the Community Garden Facebook group. Great group of resources right there. Members of the community who have tried things or had success at things. If you have a question about something, throw it up there. People are always willing to help their neighbor and to find success. I don't always get on it. I'm so bad about stuff like that. I'm sorry if you've tried to reach out to me. I'm trying to be better. My job requires me to be out and about. And so I tend to not get on my computer, but that's another great resource is that Facebook group. Here's another cool group of flowers. So when you're thinking about your design, you do want to think about year-round interest. You know, making sure that you have some evergreens and something to put in your landscape that you can see through these winter months when it's getting, you know, kind of dreary. And we've had such a weird weather years. I think that's why there's been such an increase in ornamental grasses, because you can leave those seed heads up in the winter and you get that nice yellow tone that we don't normally get from other plants. That is appealing to a lot of us to have that look through the winter months. And just another plant combination. This is another list. This is from the Conservation Garden Park Ideas. These again are 10 plants. All of these can be seen out there. And then they talk specifically about what places they are good for. On the Daybreak design review landscape page that I've linked in a previous slide, they also have a plant catalog. I looked through it again today, and just in a quick glance, I didn't see anything that I disagreed with, except for they did put English ivy, and I'm going to see if I can get to take that off. I would not recommend ivy in any place, anywhere. I mean, maybe in the countryside in London, it would be, you know, or in England, it would be great. It is invasive and just doesn't do well. That was the one that just popped out to me as far as something that's unacceptable. And the last one, and again, this will be available to you, or you can email me. I put my email earlier and I can give it to you here at the end. In fact, I'll go back to that slide when we're done. I'm going to go back now. Here, my email's at the bottom. So if you want me just to email this presentation to you, I am happy to do that. Can I answer any questions? Have I made you feel overwhelmed? Are you feeling more confident tonight? What can I answer for you?
I have a question.
Okay.
You said that the structures need a separate approval, like pergolas and stuff. What about like an arbor in your front yard, like just a single? Are those considered a structure or garden?
They are. Water fountains would be included in that as well.
Okay.
The one great thing is you can submit those plans as well as your landscape design plans all at once and only pay the fee the one time. You don't have to pay separately unless you do it at different times of the year. So let's say this year you're just putting it in your backyard. If in 6-8 months you decide to add the arbor, that would be an additional fee as well as time frame to review it. But I would include that on your plans.
Okay.
And it's an ancillary application that goes through the specific steps. But where I have mydaybreak.com community, that is the link that would take you to where those separate applications and where it really breaks it down for you.
So you would still submit it to the same committee or to do something? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And would that be the same for like a book library?
I believe it is, but that would be something I would maybe even just call the HOA on that.
Okay.
Just because we know that they're acceptable in the community, and I don't know if they have specific limits like what kind of street you face, or like are you
how far from your sidewalk? And
yeah, that kind of stuff. So that would be something that you could just email. Victoria Anderson is over there and leads that, and she's great. But anyone's over there is great that you can get a hold of. And I feel like they finally have added staff. Now, I hope everyone's aware, we can't build houses fast enough out here, and they are trying to add the staff, right? But we're getting people moving in, and they've added a ton of staff, but it's still, they're dealing with a lot of issues on a regular basis. So be patient with them.
Okay. And for your plant list, do you list everything? Like, okay, so list all the plants that you're planning on putting in, but what about if you're doing the stream list and like, I'm putting all these $500 plants on there, and then you decide like, maybe I only want 1 or 2 on there. And
I would put them on there, and I would indicate maybe a spot that they would go. Okay. They're only going to draw questions if you suddenly you've taken a side yard that doesn't get great sun and you're listing the plants there. But you could list, I've listed perennials, right? And I've listed like maybe 8 perennials that I love and use regularly, and I put them there. Yeah. Am I going to use 1 or 5 of those? I'm not sure until I get out there and realize, oh, I actually got a bigger shrub, so maybe this spot only needs 3. Okay. So they're not super concerned with that. I will tell you from my own experience in my own yard, I had a plant list a mile high, and I planted a lot of single specimens, especially in my backyard. And it's not as soothing as you think it is, even though you maybe have a plant love. It's more hodgepodgey. So if you maybe choose your favorites or choose a smaller color palette, you'll find more success personally in doing something like that. I've had to do a lot of editing because I love plants, but I've had to come to terms that not every plant's going to do well in my yard.
For sure. Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah. If I don't like, my yard to be planted with all those flowers,
okay,
can I put some vegetables in it?
You can. Vegetables are considered an annual. you know, you don't want to go through and pull out all your shrubs and turn that into a vegetable bed. That wouldn't be acceptable. But if you have open spots in your planting bed and you want to put vegetables right directly in your planting beds, that's totally acceptable. It's not going to go over very well if you have a front yard full of a planting bed and you've got, you know, 20 different vegetables growing in it. But anything you do in your backyard, that is considered an annual, and you can feel free to do that, and you don't need to have permission to stick those annuals in your backyard. I've had great
So
success
I
with that.
should
I've
submit
my
a-
tomatoes
so-
like that.
So I need to submit a plan for the, also request approval for it.
You don't need to submit a plan to add the vegetables unless
Okay.
you're going to put in raised garden beds, that physical element that would be adjusting it. But no, not to just add vegetables. We consider it just like adding a geranium, because it's not something you're going to keep long-term in the bed or could be easily pulled out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
So can you send this to me on my, this presentation to me on my email?
Yeah, so if you'll just send me an email, if you see, oh, let me go back. You see my email address right there, jkohler@livedaybreak.com.
Yeah, right at the bottom, huh?
If you'll just send me an email, I'll leave that up here for a minute. If you'll send me an email, I will send that presentation on to you. And then it takes our marketing guy a couple of days to edit the Zoom presentation, but I also can send you the Zoom presentation that obviously has me talking.
Awesome.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, guys. I look forward to hearing about just your successes and seeing what you're doing in your yards. I think it's going to be a great year. I feel like, I don't know, spring just makes me happy, and thinking about what these next couple months are going to bring. A lot of, there's a lot of, I feel like we're feeling hopeful these days, and I hope you're all feeling that as well. So if you see me out there in the community, hopefully by summer, we're out at the food trucks. Say hello, introduce yourself. I love to meet you. I miss being in class and making friends. I have a lot of friends I've made through the years in teaching these classes. So I wish you the best of luck. Let me know how I can help.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome.
Bye.